For Western Massachusetts. This is Western Mass News on Fox 6.
In the days following a shooting Monday at a Springfield High School, students from around the district are raising concerns about safety protocols. Welcome everyone to Western Mass News at 10. I'm Chris Pisano. Western Mass News reporter Maria Wilson is live for us tonight in studio with what students are saying. Maria.
Well, Chris, more than a dozen students, along with parents and teachers, voiced their concerns with their school administration at tonight's school committee meeting. They say it's a lack of transparency that has eroded their trust in the school's leadership.
I was just scared and confused.
Springfield students speaking out in the days following an altercation that ended in a shot fired inside Springfield's High School of Science and Technology on Monday. Senya Sylvia is a junior at nearby Putnam Vocational Technical Academy. She was in class when the gun went off across the street.
Nobody knew if it was true. None of the teachers were informed, so my teacher was a little bit scared and he didn't know what to do.
She's part of a group of about a dozen Springfield students who brought their questions and concerns to city leaders at Thursday's school committee meeting.
What happened on Monday at Sci-Tech is a reminder that our school's district safety protocols are not where they need to be.
The group of teens argue city and school leaders failed to quickly relay information about the situation as it was unfolding, leading to a breakdown of trust between students and administration.
I really don't feel safe because if that were to happen at my school, me not knowing that there was an armed shooter in the school would really make me feel uneasy.
Following Monday's altercation, Mayor Dominic Sarno praised the security camera system for helping Springfield police quickly respond and quell the dispute.
This is why we invest so heavily in technology. The security camera system, which is only used in these type of emergency situations, help police pinpoint immediately where they had to go and able to make arrests quickly.
But some students aren't convinced just how much those cameras really helped.
How were the police surveillance cameras, if they were fully implemented in all the schools, were able to help in that situation? Let's just say this. If someone came towards me with a gun, what would the camera do in that situation? Nothing.
The group of students has submitted a public records request with the hopes of learning more about the district's current safety protocols. As the incident continues to remain under investigation, Springfield police are asking for the public's help in locating a second suspect, 20-year-old Chance Dudley, who police believe was the shooter. Springfield police are asking you, if you know anything about this man you see on your screen's whereabouts, to call their detective bureau or to send a text to their anonymous tip line. Reporting live in studio, Maria Wilson, Western Mass News.
Maria, thank you for that live report.